Hi! It's me again. I'm still doing this because I'm a crazy person. So, today I'm going to be a little bit quicker on the punch, a little less rambly. A little less. I'm probably going to ramble some. I ramble. It's something I do. Right, where was it? Oh, right. I had a request, an actual request for a subject matter, and I thought this is something I can talk about. So, today I'm going to talk about LARPing on the cheap. LARPing, for those who are not up on the terminology, means live action role playing. Now, the thing with live action role playing, there are a couple of different varieties out there. There's actually a lot of variety, but they kind of break into two categories. So you should probably talk about that up front. The first category, the one I do the most of, is called by many names depending on what region you're in. In the area I live and play in, it's called Boffer LARP. It's sometimes called Action LARP or Contact LARP, but basically it boils down to the idea that you are going to be involved in some form of physical confrontation as conflict resolution. So you have padded weapons and you hit each other. You have spell packets that you throw to indicate that you've thrown a spell. Things like that. There is a physical component and contact. This is not to say that you're allowed to tackle people, although there are LARPs that are like that. You're allowed to shield check in some LARPs. I think that may be unsafe depending on who's on the other end of that shield check. But, people draw the line at different places. But that is one category, that sort of contact or physical LARP. The other kind is called many different things as well. Troop or parlor. I always like the term parlor LARP because it was much more encompassing than a lot of the other terms I've heard. It's most often done with the World of Darkness LARPs, but there are others out there. Now, Uh, that one is expressly the opposite of a contact LARP or a boffer LARP, in that it doesn't have you physically contacting anyone. You're not physically doing a lot of the actions of the game. If it comes to a confrontation that there must be some form of conflict, there is an abstracted rules to determine the outcome of that conflict. Drawing cards, rolling a die, doing rock, paper, scissors, something that removes the physical contact element to that abstracted combat. Now, those are the two basic types. There are a lot of variations on either end. There are some of the parlor LARPs that have almost no conflict resolution. It's all about putting yourself in a situation and sort of role-playing your way out of it. There are boffer LARPs that are very story element integrated and do have some abstracted portions of the rules, but generally speaking, the thing they have in common is that they have the boffer weapons of some sort. Now that I've clarified which is which, there are a few things that you can do to sort of affect your experience at LARPing. LARPing can be somewhat money intensive. It's as money intensive as you really want to get. I have known people who spent hundreds, maybe even thousands, on costuming for LARPs. There are some people, like myself, who are broke most of the time, who can't afford to spend that much, and you have to sort of judge where you're going to spend your time and money. Now, I love LARPing. I have done both kinds for decades at this point, and I have picked up a few things. First tip I'm going to give you, and this is good for budget LARPing and just LARPing in general: find a group. That sounds like a sort of an easy dodge, but it's important. Find somebody that you can go in with. It helps you save money because, a lot of the time you can maybe carpool to get to the event to cut down on your costs. You can have people that will help you feel more involved by, helping with the decorations on the cabin, or collecting together to get food for your group, or maybe they can do parties to help you make things for the LARP. Getting in with a group will cut down on your overall costs, and it will increase your enjoyment of the game. LARPing is an inherently social activity. You can't do it without interacting with someone. So having people who are sort of integrated with you and your experience at the LARP, specifically having in-character ties to go along with your out-of-character ties, really helps your experience, and it actually does cut down on the costs a little bit here and there when you need it to. So that's probably my first tip. The second tip I'm going to give you is learn to make stuff. Making clothes for LARPs will save you a lot of money, because buying pre-made costuming is expensive. It is not for the faint of heart. Now, there are a lot of ways that you can learn how to do that. You don't have to strictly wing it. First off, if it's a long-running LARP, there are a lot of people who will probably have that same experience, and they can help you out. They can point you towards resources. They might have costuming days where everybody gets together and starts making costuming. Sometimes people trade costuming in those situations as well. So you could look into doing that. But learn to make the things that you need. Boffer weapons. Again, you can buy boffer weapons. Some boffer weapons are made by people with the latex presses and everything, so they're very high-tech and expensive to buy, actually. They can be $70, $80, hundreds of bucks. And you can save money by learning to make your own. Now, that said, sometimes it's nice to rely on the expertise of someone else. So look around at what's going on with the equipment in your game. See who the best is at it. If they're willing, see if they'll teach you how to do it, or if you are really interested, slide money their way. Some LARPs actually do require you to use the latex weapons. I'm not really sure why that is, but I've heard of them. So you might want to look at that. Making chainmail. Chainmail is expensive. Chainmail is awfully expensive. But making it is a lot less expensive. These are things that you can learn how to do, and they will cut down on your cost for making the equipment that you need. It goes the same way with the parlor LARPs. Getting costuming made is something that can be expensive if you buy from boutiques online. But if you learn how to make that corset, or learn how to make that poet shirt, or what have you, that will cut down on your costs and increase your enjoyment as well, because you get to show off the thing that you made. It's something you want to look at. Another thing to think about with LARPs is think about which LARPs you're going to. This is not a commentary on the quality of the LARPs themselves. Some LARPs are really good and very cheap to go to. Some are really good and very expensive to go to. Is the LARP going to be near you? I've heard about great LARPs in England. I can't go to England to go play in them. I fell in with a LARPing community in Atlanta. It is about 5 hours drive for me to get to those LARPs. That's difficult for me. My life would be much simpler if I were still living in Atlanta, or I were, somehow blessed with a lot of money and time. If I were looking to add a new LARP right now, I probably would not add a new one in Atlanta because of the drive. I would look for something closer. Parlor LARPs are generally less expensive. They are not renting a state park for the whole weekend, usually. They are not renting specialized camping facilities. You don't need to bring special gear for camping out. Things like that. So they tend to run a little bit cheaper. You could look into doing parlor style LARPs. And I've played in some that were great and some that were so-so. So you need to look around, see if you can find some. Most of them will collect some kind of money to pay for the site they're using. But generally it tends to be a little cheaper than if you were going to a buffer LARP. Now, this is on my personal experience. Experiences may vary by region, but this is definitely something I had noticed. Now, if you're going to the buffer LARPs, things to keep in mind is the cost of getting to the site. Gas is expensive. Sometimes the drives are long. And by their nature, they often have the events well outside the city. So if you're going to one near you, you may still end up driving a half hour to an hour to get to the event because it's that far away. Keep that in mind. You'll want some bedding and such to bring with you. Now, because a lot of them happen in state parks and have cabins, you don't necessarily have to go out and buy yourself a sleeping bag. You could just bring bedding from home. It'll be fine. Nobody's going to give you a hard time about having the, Hello Kitty comforter on your bed. Okay, well, they might have to give you a little bit of trouble about it, but it's something that you can do to cut down on your costs. Bring food, bring snacks, bring drinks, what have you. A lot of LARPs do sell food in a tavern type situation, and I don't want to tell you not to support the LARP by not frequenting these things. But if money is a concern with you, it may be cheaper for you to bring stuff from home. And they'll understand. They're not going to, toss you out for anything like that. Those are some basic things to keep in mind for keeping the money down, the costs of doing things. Another thing and this is a big one that you might want to think about, is volunteering. A lot of the boffer LARPs in particular, they're not going to charge you just to volunteer. They want you to show up and be NPCs for them. They may send you out as talkie roles or fighty roles or what have you to help reflect your abilities, experiences, and preferences. It is not quite the same experience as just being a player, but you can still have a lot of fun doing it. You can become familiar with the game, and you don't have to pay to get into the game to find out. Sometimes they'll give you rewards for having done that volunteer time before you take up being a player. It's a good way to get to know a new game. Some parlor LARPs look for people to volunteer to help out. They are less frequent because it generally takes less people. Because most of the parlor LARPs I've seen, again, this is my personal experience. Experiences may vary, and I want to hear about it if people are having varied experiences on this. My personal experience with those parlor LARPs is they tend to be less than 30 people for the most part, unless it's a big regional event. And as such, they can be run by a couple of people. Whereas, when you have a LARP with 100 or so people, you need more staff to help keep them entertained. And so you could still look into what you can do to volunteer to help out with the local LARP, local parlor LARP. But be aware that they need less manpower to run than, say, a buffer LARP does. Those are my quick, off the top of my head, ways to LARP on the cheap. These may help you. I hope they do. Let me know if they do. Let me know if you're LARPing. Let me know if you have any suggestions along those lines. Might be good to know. Be sure to subscribe, like, the usual things with the YouTube channel stuff. And, follow me on Tumblr, Google+, what have you. And have a good day, I guess. Wow, I managed to wrap that up in 15 minutes. Well, except not, because I'm talking. Right. I'm going to go now. See ya!